Acts chapter 14, we're still in the first missionary journey of Paul. So let's take a look at the map here. We were just in Antioch and Pisidia, and now we're over here in Iconium. Those are both in the region of Galatia. And it says that the same thing happened in Iconium. Paul and Barnabas went to the Jewish synagogue, preached with such power that a great number of both Jews and Greeks became believers. And you can read this tension, though, because it says the people of the town were divided about their opinion. Some sided with the Jews, the meaning the Jews who were against Paul, the Christians. So these Jews, some of them sided with the Jews, some of them sided with the apostles, the Christian apostles. And so we've got this tension growing, and it's starting to become like a mob attitude. Again, you can read about that. So it says that they end up leaving and going to Lystra and Derbe. So once again, let's look at the map. So they're in Iconium. They end up going down here to Lystra, and then they end up going to Derbe. Notice all of these are in Galatia still. So it says, while they were at Lystra, Paul and Barnabas came upon a man with crippled feet. So you can read this. The reason I point this out, it's interesting in contrast to what happened in Acts 12. Paul heals them, and it says that they shouted out because of the healing, these men are gods in human form. And so the people decided that Barnabas was the Greek god Zeus and Paul was Hermes. And so they started wanting to worship him. And notice in chapter 12, Herod Agrippa received that worship. And right here we see, by contrast, you're going to see that Paul and Barnabas say, don't worship us. And they say, we're not gods. So they're really not in it for themselves. They're really in it for Jesus. So it was, this is a great little story in there. But it says in verse 19, in the meantime, some Jews arrived from Antioch and Iconium. So they had just been there, Antioch and Iconium. So they had just taught there and stirred some people up. And so those people eventually caught up to them here in Lystra and Derbe. And it says that they stoned Paul and dragged him out of the town thinking he was dead. But he wasn't. So then they left, and actually then they go to Derbe then the next day. And so now they're in Derbe. That whole time they were in Lystra. Sorry about that. But now they're in Derbe. And so they're preaching the good news in Derbe, making disciples. And after they did all that, Paul and Barnabas returned to Lystra, Iconium, and Antioch. They strengthened the believers there. They encouraged them to continue in the faith, reminding them that we must suffer many hardships to enter the kingdom of God, because they're witnessing it with their own eyes, right? All of the turmoil that's happening because of the message of Jesus, because people wanted to oppose it. Many of the Jews opposed it. So notice on the way out, they went all the way to Derbe on the first missionary journey, and now they're returning back the way they came, the dotted line there. Going back to Antioch, they're going to go back to Perga and all the way down. But notice what it says in blue here. Paul and Barnabas also appointed elders in every church, and with prayer and fasting, they turned the elders over to the care of the Lord, in whom they had put their trust. I put that in there because I want you to recognize that they're establishing the church here in Galatia, right? They're establishing elders. They're bringing some structure now to this new organization because they have to leave. So they go share the gospel, and right away they've got new believers and people that have to grow in the Lord. And so they brought some structure to that church, but then they left. And we're going to see here in a couple days, we're going to start reading Galatians, and we're going to see that is going to be written back to these churches that they had established on this missionary journey. So it says in verse 27, they finally made it all the way back to Antioch, and they called the church together, reported everything God had done through them and how he had opened the door of faith to the Gentiles too. And so end of missionary journey number 1. So they go all the way to Derbe. They come all the way back through Cyprus, not through Cyprus. They come all the way back to Antioch, kind of home base. And now they're telling everybody, hey, this was a great trip, and everybody rejoices. And we can rejoice too. And you're ready to read Acts chapter 14, and I'll see you tomorrow for 15.